Elementary music teacher friend, you love what you do, but you might feel unappreciated and, in fact, unseen some days. You may even feel like you're on a music teacher island and just want to connect with other music teachers who can relate to both your struggles and wins when it comes to teaching elementary music. I get you and understand completely the feelings you're having. That's why each and every week, the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast will provide you with solo and guest episodes that will help you realize you're not alone in your music teaching journey. Throughout each episode, my goal is for you to be able to walk away with actionable steps and ideas to help you feel like you're ready to take on the new week with whatever challenges may be thrown your way. Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Peresta, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're at home, in your car, in the shower, or wherever else you're listening, grab your cup of coffee or whatever other beverage is nearby and listen in to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. Hey, music teacher friend, I am so excited to talk to you today about the third annual Reflect and Renew Challenge just for music teachers. Maybe you've been feeling the overwhelm for real this year. Let's be honest, that is putting it lightly. It has been tough. Then I would love for you to join me at this free challenge where you are going to get to set goals to help spur you forward into the rest of the school year. It's all happening at the end of December, and I'll tell you in a minute how you can join us. But day one is the mid-year reflection. You're going to think back over the last few months of the school year and identify the highs and the lows. You're also going to think about what's worked for your particular teaching situation and what maybe you need to revamp a little bit moving forward. Day two, we're going to look ahead. Looking ahead towards the rest of the school year and focusing on what needs to get done to make it successful. During the school year, things have been turned upside down. Of course, we know that. So we're going to look ahead in order to help you renew your focus and face your new way of teaching in order to give you that spur of confidence and to help you beat that overwhelm moving forward. And day three is all about goal setting. You're going to set some goals and write out action steps to help you meet them. The main goal, of course, is to teach music to your students while helping them be their most creative selves. But you're going to create goals to help you beat the burnout and to help apply these goals to your particular teaching situation because as we know, every single music teacher is in a different teaching situation and at different schools. So during this challenge, you're going to get to watch short yet actionable videos, receive encouragement to spur you forward, and we'll get action steps to apply to your actual teaching situation. It's all going down December 28th through 30th, and it's going to be awesome. To sign up, simply go to subscribepage.com/reflect and renew, or simply click on the link in the show notes. All right, let's continue on with today's episode. Welcome back to the Elementary Music Teacher Podcast. Today I am joined by my good friend Jen Rafferty, and I've been needing to have her on the podcast for, ages, and I'm so excited to have her today. So Jen, I would love for you to just introduce yourself real quick to the listeners before we get in with today's topic.
Sure, and thank you for having me. I know we met on Instagram. So a while ago now at this point. So it's been really neat to just see your work and see you grow and how we've been able to help and support each other. It's been really nice. So I'm really happy to be here. I am Jen Rafferty, and I'm originally actually from Long Island, and I went to music school at Ithaca College, and I got my degree in music education and vocal performance, and I discovered my inner hippie. So I decided to stay in Central New York, and I quickly got a teaching job and continued on with my master's degree also at Ithaca College. And my experiences in the classroom were mostly in the 7th grade general music space and 7th and 8th grade choir. And over the years, I'd also created a high school modern band program, which now has been 10 years later, has really developed and blossomed and bloomed into something that kids are creating and recording and producing their own music. And it's been beautiful to watch. I had many leadership roles throughout my career as the head of my music department. I wrote a book a couple of years ago called A Place in the Staff, Finding Your Way as a Music Teacher. And that was really inspired by my observation that there are a lot of things that teachers need and want and aren't able to get. And especially highlighting the gap that happens between pre-service class, like classroom experiences and what you learn in college and what actual teaching is really like. So that book I wrote to bridge that gap. And when that happened, that was 2019. And I was like ready to go with the book tour and going to all the places and all the plans for spring of 2020. And then of course, COVID happened and changed the trajectory of everybody's life. And in that moment, as I'm sure most of the teachers listening here, there was this, this reckoning of who am I? I wasn't in my music classroom anymore. Singing itself was really dangerous. And I had to really figure out how to get my footing and what it is that brought me joy, that was able to serve a purpose that I felt really connected to. So that transitioned me to doing what I'm doing now, which is actually teacher education. And my program, the Empowered Educator, was born. So that's kind of the skinny of how that happened for me.
I love hearing teacher stories and journeys of what you're passionate about and what led you to where you are now and your teaching journey. And oh my gosh, I've loved following your work too. And hearing about you starting a modern band program, where we have talked about our stories, because I started an elementary music program at a school that hadn't had music for 7 years. And you're like, well, wait, I did that too, but for secondary music. I'm like, oh my gosh. But it is really cool seeing your baby, like you started, kind of take blossom, and it's still going, and you had a huge part in that. That's so awesome. Yeah. And so COVID, yeah, I know you have all these plans, and then COVID happened, and it threw a lot of, teacherpreneurs, teachers, educators everywhere for a loop. And it still is very tough, right?
Sure, it is
Yeah.
really, and I remember in summer of 2020, I facilitated a lot of online discussions, particularly with teachers, mostly in New York, because that's kind of where my network was at the time. And it was about really reimagining what music education was going to be like, because a lot of people were going through this double identity crisis, right? There was this identity crisis for them as a professional, because many music teachers hold their craft so close to who they are that if they're not in front of their band, if they're not in front of their choir or their orchestra or whatever, then who, like, what does that mean about me? Who am I then if I'm not a band director, if I'm not a choir director or whatever? And then there was this personal identity crisis that came along with it. And like, well, wait a second, if I put so much stock into who I was, how it related to my career, again, what does that mean about me? And so there was this mourning process, this grief that the conversations that I facilitated really acknowledged that, because I think there wasn't enough time devoted to validating the grief and the mourning of all of that. And it was just like, okay, we'll push through the next thing because everything's on fire and we need to figure out what to do next. And I'll be honest with you, I think that has caused and contributed to a lot of the underlying trauma that's happening now in schools with teachers. We talk about the kids all the time, and of course we want to protect and care for and love on our kids, but if teachers aren't showing up for themselves, there is no way that they can show up for their kids. So the work that I do now focuses on teachers in that way, because I saw a very clear need for that. And I went through that journey myself. And that time allowed me to stay home with my kids during 2020. I homeschooled them. That was like a whole nother journey for like perhaps a different podcast.
Oh man.
The adventures of homeschooling
Yes.
during COVID, right? But I also started my doctorate degree in educational psychology and have since become a certified emotional intelligence practitioner. So my work now is very much infused in, cognitive neuroscience, cognitive psychology, understanding how to have a good working relationship with your brain to understand how you're feeling and make conscious choices of how you want to feel. So that's really what this Empowered Educator program is about, is a response to what's been happening for years, but then what was really highlighted in the last 18 months.
I can just hear your passion for your work. and it's just so contagious. It makes me want to learn more. Like I'm like, oh, tell me more, which we're gonna find out more. But yeah, I wrote down something you said was about teachers didn't have their feelings validated, and I when you said that, we have focused a lot on the kids, which of course, like they are so important, and they went through trauma. They're still going through trauma. They went through a freaking pandemic. But my gosh, when it happened, it literally was just show up the next week or whenever it was and still teach, mostly virtually. And it was, yeah, that was confusing enough, but there was not a lot of let's help you process this. And teachers are living through a pandemic, but you're having to help kids, and SEL is huge and that should be huge. But it was also like, yeah, the teachers kind of got left behind a little bit. And I think maybe, and I was going to ask you about this too. Do you think part of it is maybe like administration didn't really know how to navigate the waters of it as well? So they were a little like, I want to help the teachers more, but I don't know what to do. I don't know. Do you feel like that was part of it too?
There are a lot of parts to this. And one of the things in reflection was there were no provisions in place for something like this. There were no provisions for teacher, emotional and mental health begin with, right? But now here we are all in crisis and there are no provisions. So yes, of course, like administration is like, what do we do? We have a job to do. And not only do we have a job to do, but I remember bringing this up one time at a virtual faculty meeting, like, hey, wait a second, like, what about teachers in this? And the response was, Jen, you have a job to do. You're getting paid to do a job. And I remember thinking to myself, well, wait, what? Like, I was so confused because the humanity was taken away from the problem. And I wasn't saying that I wasn't going to do my job. But what I was saying was like, we need to validate what's happening right now. We need to feel heard so we can do our job. But pushing through and pushing it down and just like keep on going for the kids is what's perpetuating this problem and what's leaving teachers feeling depleted and then just going to bed and then just getting up the next day. And we don't have enough. We can't give something we don't have. And we're consistently being asked to pour from an empty vessel. So one, I think you're right that administration didn't know what to do. But then let's take a bigger step backwards this way. There are no provisions for administrators.
Right.
Where are the programs that have support for the administrators to talk about their own social and mental health? So not only can they take care of themselves, but they can take care of their teachers who then can take care of their students, which, by the way, the empowered administrator is on its way.
Yay.
But, this is a huge concern. And my sense of urgency that you hear really comes from the fact that our kids, this generation of kids, is affected by how the adults in their lives are able to show up. And we can't just ignore the fact that we have feelings. We can't ignore the fact that we went through trauma and just like continue to do the work. So yes, we're being asked to do impossible things. Yes, there are holes in what administration was able to provide. But also the third thing is that, there is a significant amount of responsibility of everybody of how they show up to any given space. And knowing the tools to find your agency and reclaim your agency in any situation is extremely powerful. And that piece is missing also.
You were talking, and I also in my work help teachers, and I thought when the pandemic started and I knew I needed to shift, how I was helping already the teachers I was working with, I remember like vividly, like probably like 4 or 5 months in, and I felt for the first time in my life, I started struggling with anxiety. I could feel myself getting kind of depressed a little bit. And I stopped to figure out why. And when I did that, I realized I had been pouring in, had not stopped, kept going, pouring, happy. But I lost myself a little bit in there where when you were talking about that, I had not been focusing on my mental health at all. It was just like, oh, I got to help everyone. Helping my kids, same, 3 kids, school age. My husband pivoted to working from home. It was a lot of transitions, and it was just like, whoa, once I realized I was not doing any kind of helping myself mentally at all, in whatever way that looked like, once I stopped and took a step back and realized that, I really kind of took a step back where I didn't stop helping teachers, of course, but it was like, I can't show up every day. I can't in the way I was showing up is what I mean. I had to like set some boundaries and set some limits and set a schedule of when I could do things and not, it doesn't have to be all day long. So yeah, same for in the classroom, same with teachers. A lot of them want to help their students as much as they can. And so they just keep going, 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 going. And I do feel like that a lot of contributes to the burnout happening because it's like in the process, they're not even doing it on purpose. It's not like I'm just going to help my students so I get left behind. But like you said, in the process, they're kind of losing themselves a little bit in there because maybe they don't know how to mentally help them, like we just talked about with administrators not knowing how to help the teachers too. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple things there too. One, it's this narrative that teachers are selfless, which drives me crazy. And I want to know, in what other industry is it acceptable, or even revered for you to lose your sense of self?
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. And if you don't have a sense of self, you don't have a sense of priorities. You don't have boundaries. And you're just constantly giving away all of your time, energy, resources to all these other people. And then you come home and you snap at your partner, you're exhausted, or you're not sleeping because your mind's racing, you're overeating, you're undereating, your back hurts, and then on top of all of it, you're counting down days till Friday or how many years you have left until retirement. And my question to teachers when I work with them is this what you signed up for? And I've never had anyone be like, yeah, this is the life that I posted.
Totally.
No, we got into this industry because we love kids. We love the spark. We want to make a difference in this world. We want to be the change, like all of the things. And that's beautiful. But what happens is all of these external circumstances are just flying out on us. And unless we have that how, then we don't know what to do, because we can be like, oh yeah, boundaries, Jessica, like just like put up boundaries.
Yeah. Just do self-care.
Like, okay,
just self-care.
What does that mean? Like,
I know.
So that's also a piece of it, is like, people don't know how. And that's, again, like kind of where I come in, is I teach the how we do this. And it's been life-changing. I just posted something today. I don't know if you saw it yet. Someone yesterday said to me, I was like, well, how does the work that we're doing, like, how has it changed how you show up? And someone says to me, well, I was actually really excited to go to my faculty meeting this month. I literally almost fell out of my chair. I was like, wait, excuse me, what did you just, can you explain this to me, please? And she was able to, we talk about a lot about your mission and your why, which if you want to talk about that, we certainly can. But when you create your mission, you have agency then to decide what gets your attention and what doesn't. And if you can align the things that you have to do with your mission. And she was able to create that alignment. So she found value, and it's actually served her on her terms. So she was excited to go.
That's awesome.
Yes. And that is how you start to change. You can't point fingers and change every external thing, because if you do that, nothing changes. You have to change yourself. And no one wants to hear that, because then you take responsibility for your own experience. You're creating your reality, and you can change it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you have talked about in your work, we've mentioned that a few times in this episode already, but the empowered educator, which I feel like we've covered a little bit of it, just like skim the surface. But when you decided to name your work the empowered educator, what does that mean to you? And what are you hoping it means to teachers you're working with as well?
So the empowered educator is about, again, reclaiming your agency. Teachers have incredible critical thinking skills. Like this is what we do. We teach it, we live it, we breathe it. But we don't have agency, or we can't find it in the classroom, because we have to be so compliant, which, it is what it is, right? There are state and local mandates, there are district initiatives that come, but the reason, well, my administrator told me to do this, doesn't really get your fire going. And this narrative of like, well, I do it for the kids. Again, where are you as a professional in either of those scenarios? So the empowered educator gives space and permission for teachers to think about themselves in an introspective way. So, my tagline for this is, the empowered educator elevates professional development through personal introspection, because you can't change if you don't fundamentally change. You can't be something else doing the same things you're already doing. And if what you're already doing isn't working, you can either complain about it, and teachers are great at talking about their stress. But, it's just like, oh, it's like we wear it like this badge of honor, like, oh, here, look at all the stress I have today. And it's, it's like, oh, you want to hear about your stress? Well, let me tell you about all my stress right over here,
Yes.
If we're not looking at the things that cause us anxiety and frustration and overwhelm and stress in a critical way, then we're just complaining about it and venting, and we're not doing anything about it. And in fact, we're actually perpetuating it, because how this ties in, and I bring brain science in all the time to everything that I talk about, your brain only pays attention and focuses on about like 40 pieces of stimuli at a time, right? There are about 80 million pieces of stimuli, like just floating around all the time. And your brain only allows you to see about 40 through this filter system called the reticular activating system. And, you see this as an example of this is, let's say you want to get a new dog, right? And you're like, I want to get a golden retriever. And then all of a sudden the next week, what happens? You see golden retrievers everywhere, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. Like, did everyone just get a golden retriever all of a sudden? Like, am I a trendsetter? This is crazy. But what's actually happening is you told your brain to look for golden retrievers. And that's what it's showing you. So if we only, in that same way, if we only complain and focus on our stress, anxiety, overwhelm, and frustration, your brain is going to show you all of those things all the time. So we reframe how to have this working relationship with our brain. And this is just a piece of it, through this idea of who are you as a professional? What is your purpose? What is your why? What are your values? What do you really value? What is your vision? Where are you going? I mean, when was the last time that teachers are asked to dream? It's like, oh, here's your budget this year. What do you want? I'm talking like big dream. Like, who do you want to be as a professional? Because if you don't have that crystal clear vision, like, what are you doing? You're just kind of spinning on that hamster wheel. And all of a sudden it's like 2, 3, 4, 10 years later, and you're in the same place. It's just you're older, right? So we have this vision that we work towards. And then we go into all of this beautiful brain science about, how we create memories, how we recall information, things that, don't you think is important for teachers to know?
Yeah.
I mean, like how we pay attention, and I joke about how we have this, educational psychology class as part of our undergrad degree. Do you remember that class at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Like skims the surface, but yes.
Right. Like, right. And there's no context because we haven't been in the classroom yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're so young, like our own brains aren't fully even developed yet.
That's so true.
Right. I mean, like
yes.
the brain that's responsible for higher order thinking and executive functioning and problem solving, all that stuff doesn't develop until you're 24. I don't know about you, but I think about all of those really important life choices that I made before I was 24. Like, oh gosh, yikes. Yeah. So, so we really dig into that. And because it's a teacher-centered program, I focus on teachers and their working relationship with their brains, but your kids have brains too. So there's a lot of transfer to what we talk about. And then moving on through the 8 tenets, we talk about reflective practices and uncovering hidden biases and beliefs. We talk about the power of language and advocacy and real self-care, because the truth is, like, what I'm just talking about right now, this whole thing is self-care. It's not like go get a manicure and a massage. That's ridiculous. Understanding how to have a working relationship with your brain, that is self-care, because you are not your brain. You are a person who has a brain. And that's really the keys to the kingdom. And then the last tenet goes over emotional intelligence, which kind of, wraps everything up in this nice, beautiful emotional intelligence bow at the end. So it's a journey that teachers go on, but at the end, I'm seeing results of people stepping into their power and being the teacher they want to be, and showing up for their families, showing up for their kids, showing up for themselves. It's beautiful.
You're basically helping teachers unpack what's going on in their brain that in ways they've never done before. Like, as I'm hearing you speak, I'm thinking of myself here, like, oh my gosh, I've never really thought about me in the classroom. How do I best learn? How do I best, what like experiences am I bringing in, and how can I focus? And the things you just talked about, and oh my gosh, like so good, just so good. It's helping teachers focus on, like you said, you're not just getting by day to day, week to week, to Friday, but focusing on really important matters of the way your brain works and how you can be your best self in your classroom, and your best self as a person for that matter, right? Yeah.
That's
so
so
I
sick.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Is
And
there, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and if there's something to take away, at least from today, there's really two things that I say. If you don't get anything from all of the things that I talk about, there's like two things. And so the first thing I just want to say is that, I talk about remember your why a lot. That's kind of like my signature talk. And when I talk with teachers, that's a lot of times what I'm hired to talk about, if this is like this one-time thing. And the reason why that's so important is because we talked about boundaries earlier, and knowing your mission is the how to create boundaries. Because what happens when you have a very crystal clear mission is anything that's external that's coming your way, you then can make a decision about how much of your time, attention, and energy gets put towards it, because you can ask yourself, is this helping me reach my mission or not? And if it is, great. And then you can do it, and it's aligned, and it's beautiful, and it doesn't take it doesn't deplete you, because you're working towards something that you believe in.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't align with your mission, you have a choice to either live with it, manage it, or end it. And if you can end it, you're just like, I don't do that thing. If you can manage it, can you manipulate it in a way where if you make some changes, it can align? And some things you have to live with. And if you have to live with it, like that example that I told you earlier, you have to go to faculty meetings.
Yeah.
You have to live with this, right? So she was able to find a way to align it with her mission, and it served her. Great. There are times when it doesn't. Well, guess what? You don't have to put all of your attention and energy there. You can just show up. And that is an unpopular comment, because as teachers, we're always expecting perfection. We're always expecting 100%, but this is causing us to feel depleted. You have a finite amount of resources to give in every given day. And if you're giving them out to everything and everyone that asks for it, that is why you're exhausted. So you can decide, yeah, I'm going to show up there, but you're not getting my full attention.
Love that.
And that's feeling empowered, because you just can't give it away to everything and everyone. You just can't. So you get to make decisions. And then that second thing that goes along with it is that rest does not equal renewal. And if you're resting and you're going to sleep, you're just getting your body together to just do it again the next day. Renewal happens with a couple things. It happens with hope. It happens with compassion. It happens with mindfulness. And it happens with joy and play and playfulness and laughter. And if you are not incorporating any of those things in your daily life, you are not actually renewing yourself. So understanding the sacrifice renewal cycle, what are you doing in your life that allows you to feel playful or hopeful or mindful, things like meditation or prayer, or compassion and being with the people that you love and investing in those relationships. So those are like the two takeaways that if people are listening, you can take with you and do what you like with them.
Oh, I love that. When you were talking about the staff meeting example and how we feel like we got to give 100% in every single area, and that does cause burnout. And I just had this conversation in my membership site Harmony last week with teachers about the word balance itself. And you think of the scale, the measuring the fruit or whatever it is in the grocery store, but to me balance is not that way. I can't have, and if you think about not just two sides, but like let's say it's like equal, like there's 10 parts and you're trying to constantly have these balls held up and they're always in the same area and the same balanced, like on a scale is the best way I can describe it. But the word harmony, the reason I even actually named my membership site that was, yes, it's a musical term, but because I feel like different parts of your life will sometimes take center stage as like the melody, and the other parts of it are like the harmony. And then maybe the next couple of weeks, then something else moves up to the forefront. And so the same way can apply in a school setting where there's going to be different focuses on, like, let's talk about for elementary music teachers, for example, like December is a huge month for performances. There's a lot of expectations there, for any music teacher, my gosh, band, choir, anything that, let's be honest, as you're preparing for that, that's probably going to be like the melody. And so if you can't give 100% in some of these other areas and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm like slacking when it comes to lesson planning for other lessons or staff meetings or, teacher Friday out happy hour or whatever. I'm just thinking of random examples off the top of my head. That's okay. It's okay, because I can totally relate to what you're saying, because I am such a type A personality. I'm a people pleaser and I'm kind of a perfectionist. So if I don't have my ducks in a row and I don't have everything perfectly like evenly aligned in all areas of my life, it stresses me out, but I've gotten better. I gave you the example before we even started recording. Yesterday, 2 of my kiddos were home sick. They had fevers. They're fine now, but I had a lot of plans on my agenda, and they were my plans, and I don't like things to change. I don't want to move things around. If it's on the schedule, it's on the schedule. Well, I had to be flexible in that moment and say, okay, what is taking the melody? Like, I'm just using that as an example. My melody had to shift that day where my kids became my focus and everything else had to kind of fall underneath that. I couldn't give 100% of the things I had on my agenda and to my children. So it had to shift a little bit. So I think that's just what came to my mind when you were talking, thinking of my own experience as well and what I help teachers with too, because it's so important. I think a lot of the overwhelm, which I want to hear about that from you, the questions or comments you've had from teachers too, about it comes from trying to find that perfect 100% balance in every single category of your life or in your school building. And it will drive you crazy because it is not possible to be equal amounts, a pie chart, 20% here, the 20, and it all adds up to be 100%. That is so hard. And I, oh my gosh, I would love for teachers listening to understand that that's okay. It's not going to look that way. So yeah, I know you probably have feedback about that and I want to hear it. So what have you said to teachers who have like maybe said something similar to what I just said, or?
This is the story all the time. This is the narrative, like I have to do everything. Teachers generally speaking, people pleasers, control freaks. I'm a former control freak. This is how this happens. And talking about, ducks in a row, my ducks were like all over the place yesterday. Like it was hurting yesterday. I was a hot mess. Yes. So a couple things about that. I don't think about work-life balance because I agree. I think it creates this visual that doesn't reflect real life. So I use the phrase work-life blend because that can be messy. And it always takes me back actually to like my elementary school art teacher when I first learned about pastels and like we smudged the colors together, and there could be more red and more yellow sometimes, or could be whatever, but it's like this blend because there are going to be things that change. And the second piece of that is that judgment that we put on everything when we don't live up to our own ridiculous expectations. And, everyone has this mean girl inside of them. Like we just do, right? And it's that mean girl voice that's like, you're not good enough. You're not doing this enough. You're not supposed to be doing this. Like you should be doing this. And every time you start hearing that mean girl, you need to stop and pause for a second. And I take people through this, exercise. I can kind of briefly talk about it right now, but again, talking about what's going on biologically in your brain is when you are activated in stress, your fight, flight, or freeze kicks in because cortisol is running through your body. And we've created these circuits that come automatic. These are conscious circuits that happen. So we have this one thought that causes our body to react in this way. And before we know it, we're like spinning out of control of the I'm supposed to use and I should be and I'm not enoughness. And it's habitual. It is habitual. And in order to break that cycle, you have to first notice, you have to calm down your nervous system. And the easiest way to do that is by breathing, purposeful breathing. And for me, and when I tell the people that I work with, hands on heart, and the reason why you do that is so you can remind yourself, like, here I am in space, and do a box breath, which is just 4 in, hold for 4, 4 out, hold for 4. And I do that 3 times, and that will calm your nervous system down so you are able to move forward with whatever it is that you are wanting to do and make a conscious choice instead of just reacting all of the time, because your body again is thinking, it's doing what your brain wants it to do. I'm stressed. This is how I react to stress. This is what she wants us to do. Great, done. It doesn't care that you're not living up to your potential. It doesn't care that you're not thriving. The only function of your brain is to make sure that you're alive. So if you're in stress, it thinks that there's a bear in the room and it wants to protect you from that bear. So then what happens is there's a bear in the room, and then the mean girl's like, why are you so scared of this bear? And judging this thing. And it comes to a point then we're dealing with the bear, but we're also like listening to this mean girl voice, right? And by the way, like, everyone has a mean girl. So
I have one.
Whoever you identify,
I sure do.
Mean girl somewhere in your voice.
I'm thinking of the Mean Girls movie as you're talking. I'm like, she's
like,
in there,
right? Yeah, like this is how it is. And so the judgments about the bear is also another obstacle of like, I'm just not enough. I'm never doing enough. I'm not good enough. I don't have time. I don't have the energy. And again, going back to what I said before, if those are the things that you're focusing on, well, that's the evidence that your brain is going to continue to give you about your reality, because it thinks that's what you want to see. So again, nothing changes if nothing changes. And Empowered Educator is that how. And again, it's noticing. I'm thinking like the music teachers who are like in it during December, right? Like everything needs attention. You have an opportunity to stop and pause, notice how you're feeling, breathe so you can calm your nervous system down, and then make conscious choices about how you want to spend your time and energy and focus. That gives you agency. That allows you to feel empowered.
Oh, girl, 9 million good points. I literally like mic drop, walk out the room. We could just end it right there. That was so good. No, for real. That was so good. You talk about this in a way that's just, I've never heard it explained like this. And it's like my brain's going, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Glad.
Yeah. So there has been a lot of overwhelm, as we've already talked about, understandably, the last couple school years. So what advice, we mentioned this earlier, but do you give to teachers about self-care that is 100% different than a lot of the advice given out there for sure?
Yeah. Well, so this is what I'm explaining right now is like, this is self-care. It's not branded as self-care because self-care has been thrown around all the time. It's like lost its meaning. And, you said, SEL, I have to say too, like SEL is the same thing. It's so overused. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
What self-care needs to be is, first of all, changing the narrative about what it means to be in a service profession like teaching, and really connecting to the idea of you need to put your oxygen mask on first. You have to do that. And again, you cannot pour from an empty vessel. And this is like a whole nother thing too, about just like being women and moms in this profession as well. Like that adds a whole nother layer of emotional addiction, of guilt, that we just like rub ourselves down in all of the guilt of all of the things that we are supposed to be doing and should be doing.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right. So like, again, when you start to go down that thought process, this self-care is noticing, it's breathing to calm down your nervous system. But then that third piece of it is choosing a different thought. I'll use this example because I mean, and this is kind of like going down another avenue, which I don't know that we have time for
No,
today.
you're fine.
But,
no.
But your thoughts are affecting your emotions. Your emotions are direct responses to your thoughts, which then contribute to your behavior, which creates the result and the realities that you have, which then affirms your thought. So for example, I'm stressed, I don't have a lot of time. That thought creates this sense of tension. For people like me, I get so sweaty when I get stressed out. It's disgusting. So I have that, right? There's like this tightness in your chest. There's heavy breathing. There's all the things. So then my behavior is, I am not showing up in a way that is expansive and spacious. So what is my results? I don't ever have enough time to do any of the things that I want, which affirms the thought. And the only way to break that cycle is to notice what you're feeling, because we're feeling beings that think, not the other way around. Your body knows what's going on way before the thought catches up to it. So if you can notice, oh gosh, like my breathing is really tight right now. I'm really sweaty. What's going on? What thought am I thinking? Then you can actually think something different. Your thoughts are just past experiences, ego, and fear most of the time. Most of the time, that's all it is. And it's like the same thoughts that we have every single day. So when you interrupt that thought cycle and think to yourself, what do I need to think right now to feel the thing that I want to feel? You have agency. And then you can show up in a different way, which gives you a different result. But if you don't break that cycle, you're always going to be in that loop. That's self-care. Yeah. And the second, and I'll just say one last thing about this thought. The second you start thinking about shoulds, I should, or I'm supposed to, think to yourself, whose should is this? Is it mine? Or is this someone else's? And if it's someone else's should, then you are living someone else's expectations and you are living someone else's life. And especially in education that is built so deeply upon tradition, all of these shoulds and supposed tos are really just peer pressure from dead people. Like, this is what this is. So don't should on yourself, and certainly don't should on other people. Yeah, right. Like this is what it is. Yeah.
I was just going to say I had a mentor that said that, are you shoulding all over yourself? And the first time they said that, I'm like, did you say should? And then they are, but it's true. And it went, gosh, I just love that phrase because it's so true. I should do this. I should do this. I could have done this. I would have done this if I did do the thing I could have done. And then you're talking about thought. Your thought trail at that point is just like spinning like a cyclone. You're just like in this whole, like, I should have done this, instead of, no, slow down, take breaths, change the thought. It's okay.
Right. So to use your example of like concert season, right?
Yes.
You know, people are like, Jen, I don't have time to breathe. You don't have time to breathe? No. You can't function with a bear in the room. So take the 20 seconds it takes to calm your nervous system down so it doesn't think that there's a bear in the room anymore. And on kind of like this greater level, everyone is activated right now. You're all just like just base level, everyone's activated. There is always a bear in the room for adults, kids alike, right? Which is why everyone's overly sensitive than maybe they usually are or had been previously to any small piece of threatening or overwhelming or frustrating or stressful stimuli, because we're already at a higher base level of activation. So in knowing that, it makes this breathing exercise even more important, because there's right now there's always a bear in the room.
Oh, 100%. Yes. So we've talked about so much, and I mean, I could be going on with you for 4 to 5 hours for sure. So is there any advice you have about anything we already talked about, or maybe you want to touch on something we haven't talked about before we go today?
Well, I think the biggest takeaways right now is really considering what your why is. And I have a video up on my Facebook page, which is The Empowered Educator. And that walks you through that process of creating a why. Because, at the beginning, when I do this, some teachers are like, well, I do this because I want to make a difference in kids' lives. And that sounds beautiful. But the whys that we create really need to go deeper than that. So, for a teacher who says, well, I want to make a difference in kids' lives, why? Well, I want them to be better members of society. Why? And we keep going further and deeper down. And then we get to the really juicy stuff. So when you say the reason why, there's that buzzy juju feeling in your chest, right? Where it's like, oh, it's resonating with me. That's the why that I'm looking for. That's the why that you should be looking for. So for me, and I don't know if I shared this yet, my why is to inspire people to discover their voice. And that's been pretty consistent throughout the last few years. And it has served me well, because when I was in the classroom, I literally did that. I inspired people to discover their own singing voice. I still do that in a variety of ways through my business, through my online singing communities, and through my virtual voice lessons. But it also helped me make the decision to transition out of the classroom, because I was at a crossroads and I thought to myself, well, how else can I inspire people to discover their voice? And I had this urgent passion to work with teachers. So that has served me as a motivation to create this program. That's how important your why is. So when, again, things come down the pike, I say to myself, is this helping me inspire people to discover their voice? Yes or no? And then I get to decide how much, and if at all, you're getting my time, attention, and energy. So that's, I think, the big takeaway here. And again, you can find that video that walks you through that on that Facebook page. And then again, that sacrifice renewal cycle. Find times throughout your day for hope, for dreaming, for mindfulness. This breathing exercise we do, that's mindfulness. So if you're just doing the breathing thing, like, you got it covered already. Mindfulness can be prayer, or it could be meditation. It could be yoga, compassion, really taking an interest into the relationships you have. However, there's a fine line between like taking care of and then having this beautiful reciprocal relationship, right? So just be wary about that. And then the last thing, of course, is joy and laughter and playfulness, because everything is so damn serious all the time. Yes. And we don't need to be, and we forget to laugh as adults. And that in and of itself will renew you so you can get up and do it again the next day.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do at the end of the day is just to watch stupid sitcoms, just where I don't have to think about anything anymore. And it can just be running in the background. And I'm just like, staring at the TV mindlessly, and then it'll maybe just be one joke in the entire episode that makes me laugh. But I like to end my day that way, because I just think, humor is so important. And I, like you said, everybody's taking everything so seriously sometimes. So bring some laughter in. It's so important. Jen, I've loved this entire conversation, and I'm going to link to that Facebook video you talked about, but I wanted you to let everybody know where else they can find you and all the work you mentioned today as well.
Sure. So my Facebook page is at The Empowered Educator. My Instagram page is at Jen Rafferty Music, which is actually my company name is Jen Rafferty Music, and The Empowered Educator fits right in there. You can reach me at my email at music@jenrafferty.com. And my website is empowered-educator.org. And all of that information is also on that Facebook page. So it's super easy to get in touch with me. And I'd love to hear from teachers out there of what they're going through, what their whys are. That's been really fun. Every once in a while, I'll get an email, be like, hey, here's my why. And I've never heard two whys be the same thing. So it's pretty inspiring for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And everybody, make sure you reach out to her. Let her know your why. And if you're listening to this episode, tag Jen and myself on Instagram or Facebook and leave it in the comments there as well. And so thank you so much for coming on. I've loved this conversation.
My pleasure. It's been really great to talk to you.
Well, hey there. Thank you so much for listening into the Elementary Music Teacher podcast. There is an exclusive Facebook group just for listeners of this podcast and any elementary music teacher called the Elementary Music Teacher Community Facebook group. Come on over and join us there, where we have conversations around the podcast episodes and encourage each other each and every week. And also head to my website, thedomesticmusician.com. I have some free resources there that you can download to help you gain traction in your classroom today today, as well as the blog and the membership site and all kinds of other goodies to help you keep going in your music teaching journey. I cannot wait to keep connecting with you and encouraging you and spurring you on in your journey of teaching elementary music. Hang in there, have an amazing week, and I will see you soon.